All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Sam Harrell. I'm an information officer with the Alaska Incident Management Team. This is the virtual community meeting for the Creek Fire, November 4th, 2020. We've got quite the agenda tonight, and let's get right into it. I'll give a rundown of who's going to be a presenter. We have the incident commander with the Alaska Incident Management Team, Ed Sanford. Incident meteorologist, Angie Inyeti, will be here. Our fire behavior analyst, I've tripped on that every time, Byron Kimball. Todd Johnson, Air Resource Advisor, he'll be speaking on smoke impacts for the area. Our Operations Chief, Cato Howard. Fresno County Supervisor, District 5, Nathan Magsig, will be here. From the Fresno County Sheriff's Office, we have Lieutenant Kathy Curtis, and also Forest Super for the Sierra National Forest, Dean Gould, will be here. So we're live right now on both Facebook, the Sierra National Forest Facebook page, and the Creek Fire Information YouTube channel. If you're watching on the YouTube channel and would like to ask a question or send a comment, you can do that via email, 2020.creek@firenet.gov. I have other information officers working with me who are monitoring that email. And if you're following along on Facebook, please, you can put your questions and comments in the comment section of Facebook, and we'll be monitoring that also to be able to pull questions out once the presentation is done. So we're looking for just fire-specific type of questions that are related to this, and we'll answer what we can here during the show tonight, but what we're not able to get to tonight, we will follow up on. Of course, these will be recorded and will be available on both Facebook and the YouTube channel, so that if you're not able to watch it now, or if you need to tell some friends, neighbors, whoever about this, they'll be able to catch it later. We're having American Sign Language interpretation provided by Aaron Yerby, so thank you, Aaron, very much for joining us. Once these are recorded and available online, they'll also be closed captioned. So if we're talking too fast for Aaron to keep up, we've got you covered with closed captioning here as we move on in. So let's not hesitate here. We'll get going with Ed Sanford, our incident commander with the Alaska Incident Management Team. All right, Ed.
Thank you, Sam. Good evening, folks. My name's Ed Sanford, incident commander with the Alaska Interagency Management Team. With my deputy, Tom Kurth. You can't see him right now, but you're going to be hearing from myself and Tom throughout our time here. So we got ordered up to this incident on October 27th, and the 28th we were in travel status. On October 29th, we got into California, spent the time with the agencies here with CAL FIRE in addition to U.S. Forest Service. So we're looking for their direction, in addition, objectives, course of actions, and spent a good day with those guys, but also having those conversations as we were getting down here to get our situational assessment. Once we were done with that, we had another 24 hours on the 30th to spend time with the California team, which they spent 2 weeks with you guys. During that process, this is where our team, with Jerry McGowan, the incident commander, where I sit down with him and go over what they've accomplished on the incident, what their objectives were, and where they're at in the course of action. So part of the ICS system is also, we have operations, logistics, finance, plans, information, all that stuff, and those guys marry up with the California team. Get all that information so when the California team is done working, which our national standards, 14 days we work and then take days off. Us too need days off too to reset because there's lots of incidents out there that we need to respond to. This year was a busy season with fire season in the Lower 48 throughout the nation. And even this team's been out a couple times here in the Lower 48. So once we're done with that transition, we've got all the situational assessment and direction that we need to go. So on October 31st, That's where we took operational control over. And we want a smooth transition in that. And that's how the process works. So during that time till now there's a bunch of things that we've been working on. So there's three major things at this point. Suppression repair, you're going to hear a lot of that from the operations section. And then we also have suppression parts of the fire. And then a lot of it's information. And throughout our process, too, we have cooperative meetings that we have out there, same meetings that we're having here. So that's when we bring all those folks together, the forest, CAL FIRE, the electric companies, and making sure they understand what we're doing out there to meet those objectives in a safe manner and a timely manner. Okay? So throughout this presentation tonight, you're going to see folks come up here. We're going to talk about weather. We're going to talk about the fuels. We're going to talk about the current situation, expected fire activity the next day or so. We'll talk about the winds and stuff, the hazards we have out there. And at the very end of this, like Sam mentioned, that we'll take those questions in. So the experts, whether the operations or the finances like that or whatever, we'll get up here and talk, answer your questions. Myself, Tom, and I will be able to answer some of those questions. So this is I anticipate probably 3 or 4 more days. We will come back and give you updates on another public meeting. So thank you for joining us, and I'll talk to you in a bit.
All right, thank you, Ed. Now a few words from our incident meteorologist, Angie.
Hi, good evening. I'm Angie Agnetti. I'm the incident meteorologist that has the privilege to work with the Alaska team now. Last week you saw me with the California team. My main job here is to always keep a weather watch across our firescape to ensure firefighter safety. That's always first and foremost. They need to know if there's a wind shift coming or if humidity drops significantly. That's going to have an impact on the fire that they see out there that they're trying to mitigate impacts for you guys and your communities. In addition to always keeping a weather watch, my job is also to provide a variety of different forecast products to help the team anticipate what type of weather is coming and when, so we can move resources, whether that's people or stuff, to help in fire suppression and cleanup efforts. So I do have some information on a big weather change that's coming. It's something that we've been highlighting now for well over a week. But until we get to that point, you guys are actually seeing the weather matrix now. This is one of the products that I produced for the team. It's basically a weather outlook. And today and getting into tomorrow into Thursday, we're still looking for very warm temperatures across the firescape, as well as some low humidities. Those humidities falling into the teens now, not the single digits. So the atmosphere across our fire is gradually starting to modify. We're starting to have a little bit more of a westerly flow, which brings in that moisture over the Pacific across our firescape. We've been so dry for so long. It's been over 160 days since we've had a significant rainfall event across the fire. That's going to change this upcoming weekend. But until then, today and tomorrow still was pretty warm, and tomorrow will still be warm and dry. So now with the matrix that we're going to pull up again, thank you. So this is a planning tool that we use for the team to get a feel for what type of weather's coming and when. And the way this tool works is we're looking across the entire firescape, and it's a very large fire, but basically the numbers that you're seeing are dialing in on weather that's expected above 7,000 feet. That's where some of our more active fire is. In the different days of the week, you see these color-coded weather parameters. And where you see green are weather conditions that are not necessarily supportive of fire activity. Yellow is where you see conditions that, hey, heads up, we could have a little bit more active fire growth this day because of that specific parameter. And red is definitely a big heads up kind of watch out situation for us in terms of weather. So Thursday, tomorrow, you see the more yellows and more reds lined up there. Well, that's a transition day, and that's always kind of a heads up day for us when we talk about fire weather. We're going from a hot, dry pattern transitioning to a more dynamic wet pattern, which overall is going to be suppressing fire activity once we get into the weekend. Before that happens, though, Thursday night into Friday, ahead of this highly anticipated cold front, we're going to have some very strong winds ramp up across the firescape. Those winds are going to be creeping up from the southwest and really ramp up in speed and magnitude as we get into Thursday night, specifically after midnight through midday Friday morning. Because if it's coming at us from the southwest, we could have some channeling of wind or some funneling of wind coming up the San Joaquin River Basin and testing some portions of the northern and northeast tier of the fire, where we still have active fire activity. Some of those winds, actually up where the fire's more active, sustain speeds of 30 to maybe even 40 miles an hour with gusts 50 to 60. And again, that time frame is going to be late Thursday night through Friday morning. So that is a big weather watch out for us here on the creek. So the front comes through the day on Friday, and then Friday afternoon into Friday evening, we can look at the matrix there again if that might help. There we go. We actually start seeing our rain chances go up significantly. So Friday is about a 50% chance of wetting rainfall across our fire. And then once we get into Friday evening, Friday night, that's when we see that 70% chance ramp on up there. So not just rainfall, but we're also talking about snow and snow accumulations at this point. The matrix there is trying to point out that for lower elevations, generally below 5,000 feet, we could see up to a ½ of an inch of rainfall the Friday night into early Saturday time frame, whereas higher elevations could see up to 2 to 4 inches of snowfall. That would be for areas above 5,000 feet. Kind of a big range right there. Obviously, some of the higher accumulations would be up on the higher elevations. So then we get into Saturday, we have a brief lull in widespread snowfall amounts, and it's going to be more of kind of passing shower activity, not a lot of significant accumulation. And then our next wave of of precipitation comes in late Saturday into Saturday night, where we could have another round of wetting rainfall across the lower terrain and snow across the higher elevations. And we see that snow level now lowers down to 4,000 feet. And then when we get into Sunday, lower snow level with a chance of some more accumulation in both rainfall for lower terrain and snow across the upper terrain. So all in all, we're looking like a pretty cool, wet, and windy weekend. Now, getting out in the extended forecast, the Monday time frame, we actually start to dry out a little bit, but we remain very cold into next week. So let's go forward a slide here, and just wanted to graphically show you what some of those rainfall accumulations are looking like. This is a rainfall total from Friday evening through Sunday evening, and you can see that parts of our lower slopes there, generally to the west-southwest of Shaver, we get down into about the 1/4 to 1/2 inch range for accumulated rainfall. And let's go to the next slide there. And this is what the snow footprint is looking like for us. So once we get across most of the fire, it looks like a good 2 to 4 inches accumulation is most likely as we get into this weekend, but some of the higher terrain could see 6 inches plus in some areas. So it is looking like a very cool air mass coming in, windy, and also really helping temper down those moisten up the atmosphere. All right, let's go forward to the next slide. And just a quick little outlook as we go into beyond next week, what the weather pattern's looking like. We basically have this big upper level trough that carves out and persists across the western part of the country, and that's going to keep a pretty cold, dynamic northerly flow across our firescape, which is going to help keep temperatures cooler than normal, and that's the graphic that you see there. A very high chance of us having above normal temperatures over the next, or below normal temperatures over the next couple weeks. And then finally, let's take a look at that precipitation outlook. And with that northerly flow and persistent East Coast trough, we're going to have more frontal systems want to swing on down and bring the chance of some more precipitation accumulation across our firescape. So just another little tidbit of information here. Depending on what side of the range you're on, if you're on this Creek Fire side, your local Weather Service forecast office is National Weather Service Hanford. So if you're interested in dialing in on what that weather outlook looks like for you, you can go to the National Weather Service Hanford website. If you're on the other side of the crest out towards Mammoth, your local Weather Service office is National Weather Service Reno. So if you want to know what this upcoming weather looks like for your specific location, go check out those Weather Service pages.
All right, Angie, thank you very much. Fire behavior analyst, Byron Kimball. You're killing me, Byron, with all these words.
No worries. Good morning. Good evening. Byron Kimball. I'm the fire behavior analyst working with the Arizona team. So we do still have active fire in a number of places across our firescape, particularly northwest corner up in the Tower Knob area. That area has been relatively calm the last few days. Really, the weather and everything has allowed it to be not too terribly active. Our active areas are over here in the Division Mike area, Pond Lily Lake down to Lake Thomas Edison. We've been keeping close eyes on that just because of the activity in there and the preponderance of fuel in there. Back up a little bit. Our fuels across the firescape, very, very dry. All fuel classes from the very, very small grasses and pine needles all the way up to the large logs lying on the ground in the forest have very little moisture in them. 6, 8, 10 to maybe less than 10% fuel moisture. A way to look at that, an analogy I use, if you think about the 4x4 that you buy at Home Depot that comes out of the kiln, supposedly dried, ready to build with, that's about anywhere from 10 to 12% fuel moisture. That same 4x4 laying on the ground out in our forest right now is at about 6 to 8% fuel moisture, significantly drier. That being said, that makes all of those fuels very easy to ignite and very available for the fire to be able to move through those fuel types. And that's what we're seeing particularly up here in the Pond Lily Lake area are those heavy dead and down fuels being receptive to fire, catching the embers that are coming out of the fuels that are actively burning, and then sustaining that fire spread and moving it forward. That being said, we do have active fire up here in the Pond Lily area. The fire moved, not substantially, but it moved to the east, about 700 acres today under the influence of the westerly flows that we've been seeing. As we get into later in the week, however, and particularly the next 36 hours, there is a concern that it could move to the northeast. We haven't seen that yet. We're going to be paying attention to that. One of the things we're looking at, and Randy Striplin, our long-term analyst who does a lot of the modeling for me, will be up here to talk about it too in a little bit here. The conditions we're seeing are actually becoming so extreme with the wind that they're actually blowing heat away from the fire. The wind is blowing so hard that it's not allowing that heat to transfer from fuel bit to fuel bit. And so by blowing the heat away, it's actually slowing the rate of spread down somewhat than what we would expect to see with those higher winds. So we're hopeful that that may be what we're seeing up in here. We've modeled it some. Randy will talk about it here in a little bit, that it's not spreading as quickly as we might expect or as we've seen previously. And actually up in here, it actually has spread south into down closer to Pincushion Peak this evening on the other side of the ridge. So that would help us too. That area has much more rock in it than what's in there before. So all in all, we still have some open line. We do have some concerns over the next 36 hours, but then after that, things are starting to look very good with the advent of the moisture, moistening up our fuels and really helping us to suppress any of that active fire that's out there on the ground. Thank you.
All right, Byron, thank you very, very much there. And our long-term fire analyst, Randy Striplin, giving us a modeling and then the future look at the fire here.
Yes, Randy Striplin, long-term analyst. So one of the things we're going to look at, can you show that slide? Sort of where are we in the season? And so Josh is going to show a graphic right here. So this kind of shows, based on a 40-year climatology, so all the history of sort of the weather, the fire danger in this area. On Saturday, which is November 7th, based on that climatology, we'll be at a 90% chance that really we're hitting a season-ending event or really conditions. The conditions with the sun angle, the day length, that's just, we're getting to the time of year where it's really hard to support a lot of fire growth. So this is what this graphic shows. And as we said, you know, we're entering sort of a change in the weather where we may see some moisture, and with the fuel conditions, especially the heavy fuels the way they are right now, it really takes a sustained set of conditions with higher humidities, even if there's no rain. You need sort of a longer term period with higher humidities and lower temperatures to really start bringing the moisture up in those heavier fuels so they're not receptive. But we are entering that period. What's different about this year is, you know, there's probably not a lot of years like this year in that climatology. We're sort of at the very dry end of that. So we may, that's probably why we're seeing the conditions we are this late in the year. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is a near-term fire behavior run that is looking at 4 days that started this morning. And so there's a couple days, if you see the yellow and the orange more towards the west side there, that's today and Thursday. And then that blue part is, the blue part is Friday when the winds really kick in. And this we think is probably a realistic run. And there's actually, Saturday, there's a little outline outside the blue that is actually the growth that's very little on Saturday. Obviously, the winds be dying down by that time, and it'll be a lot cooler and a lot moister. So, and this represents fire growth with no suppression actions. So there's no water being dropped on this or anything. This is just saying if nothing happens for suppression, that's what we think is a realistic fire progression. And that shows that the longest point, I think, a little bit less than a mile that moving towards the northeast. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Now this next slide, I really ramped up the winds, right? And the models have a hard time really working with really high winds, right? So in this run, there's actually 50-mile-an-hour winds on it for a couple hours. So you see that finger, it's really trying to produce a finger that really goes a little bit further. And that finger is about 2.5 miles out towards the ridge there, up the drainage. So we think this is probably less realistic than the other one, but it's in there as a possibility, right? So as I said, it's just a really narrow finger just because the model really struggles with when you do the winds that fast. And then for perspective, the next slide kind of gives you a bigger picture to see the distance that even if it made that big run, the distance that it still would have to go before it started hitting the values at risk. And so that's it. Thank you.
All right, Randy, thank you very much. Next up, we have our Air Resource Advisor, and what he does is he follows the smoke and the movement of the smoke. The smoke impacts all of us on the fire. Firefighters, it impacts our air operations, it impacts the public, and Todd Johnson here is our Air Resource Advisor, and he follows along on that. Todd, let's tell the folks what you're seeing coming here.
Thank you. Like you said, Todd Johnson, Incident Air Resource Advisor, working on the Creek Fire. I wanted to take a look at that one satellite photo. There you go. I've been here 5 days. You've lived with this fire for 60 days. Every single day looks like this photo as far as I've been around, and that's for a couple of reasons. We've had some very stable air in this area, and it's been very warm, very dry, and there hasn't been a whole lot of wind whatsoever. And so every day, that fire generates smoke, and every afternoon, that smoke flows right down into the primary drainage, where most of the population exists and lives. For the last 5 days, it looks exactly like that. So, as I said, you guys have been living with this for 60 days. But there's good news ahead. So what you've heard already from Angie, our wonderful IMET, is we're anticipating a pretty good cold front coming through. So what that means for us tomorrow is we can expect some stable conditions, kind of like what that map or that satellite photo was showing you tomorrow morning. And then as that cold front approaches out of the north, what we're going to end up with is a southwest wind. And that southwest wind is going to take all the smoke that you've been living in for the last 60 days and push it right up through this drainage. Okay? That's a lot of smoke. It's going to start at the top, cleaning out the top of the fire, and then eventually later in the afternoon into the evening time, we'll start cleaning out the lower valleys, which will turn into a very, very nice day come Friday. So what we're expecting then is, on Friday morning, is the communities way down in the valley that have been eating a lot of this smoke should be relatively clean. And so that's huge for you guys, finally, right? But as we start approaching with that southwest wind, a lot of this smoke is going to end up over into the Mammoth community, Lee Vining, Crowley Lake, and perhaps on down to Bishop. And we're going to see that for a couple of days until this moisture, cold air, high humidity start reducing the amount of smoke. And hopefully that'll be a whole lot sooner than later. So that's sort of the expectation. By Friday afternoon, we'll still have a little bit of smoke heading up into the Mammoth Lakes area. But hopefully that moisture and snow will reduce the amount of smoke heading your direction. So hopefully that's the end of our fire season. I'm hoping so, because I know the air quality has been poor for a very, very long time, and we're all looking forward to clean air. So let's look forward to Friday. Thanks.
All right, Todd, thank you very much. Next up with the Alaska team, our Operations Chief, Cato Howard.
Good evening, Cato Howard. I'm the Operations Section Chief for the Alaska team. I'm going to start by going around the fire. We're going to talk about our other activities other than suppression. I'll leave suppression for the last because it'll probably generate the most conversation. But just to let everybody know, suppression isn't the only thing we're doing on this fire. There are other activities from Division India all the way around the backside, all the way up to China Peaks. And we're actually working in some areas in here to get out of here because of the weather, impending weather. So a lot of the stuff we're doing is dependent on the weather and getting that done. And the activities that we're doing right now with those crews and 100 pieces of equipment, along with the power company and other companies out there doing their work, is hazard tree removal for our firefighters in campgrounds and any road services or areas they may be working, and then hazard tree removal in the public areas and around public's homes that they don't have the skill set to do. So if you do see some people doing that, please give them a wide berth. Some of those trees are fairly tall. The other aspect of what we're doing is any damage we did with equipment or hand line or anything that the fire damaged that we can repair immediately and fix and try and get access and ingress back to as close to normal as we can before the winter sets in. Some small soil water turbidity and putting wattles in different places is part of our job also. So 100 pieces of equipment are moving around multiple different locations, pulling down trees and moving them and stacking them, fixing road surfaces, dropping hazards and everything right now. That's going on, like I said, from India all the way back around to Papa. They're doing a whole bunch of work in here today trying to get out of there. They're going to be in this lower end probably for another 5 to 7 days and probably 3 to 4 more days up in here. And then we're going to start spreading them to the east on the fire. So please give them a wide berth on their equipment as they're moving it. Everything takes a transport and everything is going to be driving on that road moving in one direction. So that's the suppression part, suppression repair part of it. Let's talk suppression. So we did have 3 crews in here. They finished their line around the edge and mopped up 250 feet. Those 3 crews have been moved down into the areas that we need them most, and the suppression repair, we're monitoring this as we fly every day with our air attack and our operations staff that goes up. Nothing on there today near the line that was any problem. They did a great job of mopping up in there and pulling all their equipment. We'll continue to monitor that for the rest of the fire. As we go around the side, outside, this is still a smoking area in here, and there's probably going to be some growth. This map is fairly good, but ground truthing it would be a lot better if we did it when we could see it in the smoke. As we come around to Pond Lily, that, of course, everybody's interested in that in the Mammoth. That is still smoking today. Some of the questions that we've had in the past are that, why aren't you guys using water? Well, the big issue for us is that we have a set of rules that our ground firefighters maintain to maintain their safety and not go into areas that would decrease their safety or cause injury or harm to them. Our fixed wing aircraft and our rotor wing aircraft have those same standards: visibility, flight elevations, wind profiles, and stuff like that. And the last few days, we've been able to get in there some, but most of the time the profile is not allowing our aircraft to get in there and dip out of those close ponds in there and put water on the line. We lost a section of contingency line in there because of that, and we put a fair bit of work in there, a week to 10 days worth of work in there trying to do that, and we couldn't hold it. So the crew is pulled out of there. We have ordered 2 more crews for the whole area up there, a couple more engines, and we're pulling some crews from the center from some of our suppression stuff and putting it up there for the next few days. They'll be up there through the wind event and quite possibly through the weather event we're going to call, trying to work with suppression activities and weather activities and keeping people safe. So we have different aspects of what we need to take care of. But up in that area up there, the smoke is too hazardous for us to go into. I cannot put people on the ground in there because the rocks and the slopes and the trails in there aren't adequate for what they're doing in there and carrying their own packs and all their own equipment. So you'll see more staff around there, around the rim, working and looking, seeing, and watching for any spots or anything like that coming out of there. The spotting distances should be relatively short unless a tree torches, and there's going to be occasionally a tree torch. But right now, the actual transport of the fire is the surface fuel, and it's in the brush and the grasses and the litter that's on the ground, which doesn't. It has about a 2 to 3 foot flame length on it, carries it through, but the ladder fuel is allowed to get into the trees, and once it gets into the trees, depending on the height of the tree, the wind, surface aspect of the location of the tree, determines the distance it can go. Added with that is the probability of ignitions, but you've heard that the cold weather, the wind will overpower the ignitions, and the higher RHs will keep it from starting fire. So that stuff drops off. The probability of it getting larger is still there, but the probability of it getting really large and running fast has dropped off dramatically in there. The rest of the time on the fire, we did have 5 camps. We're down to 3 camps now. They're all located in the lower half based on what our weather probabilities are and ease of getting equipment back and forth. So we have staff in Echo and Auberry. We still have staff in China Peak, and we're still going to leave them there, but we're going to start moving them down and out of the center of the fire and off the interior of the fire until this weather storm goes. If you look at most of our rigs, they have fleet tires on them that are the same as semi tires on it. We all know how semis have a hard time getting up and down roads without chaining up. But our engines, all the transports, and most of the other items that we're using for equipment are not equipped for ice and snow roads, especially on a slick surface. And so to lower the probability of somebody getting injured, we're going to pull our staff out off of the suppression repair work, and they're going to be closer into the fire line edge, but you'll see more of them, so please be careful around those guys. They have a hard time with visibility around some of their vehicles and backing up and turning, so please don't cut them off or try and pass them in bad spots. Other than that, I think I'm done here, Sam, unless somebody has some questions.
We'll have questions following up there afterwards, Cato. Well, I'm sure we'll have a few here for you. Thank you very much. And now from Fresno County Supervisor Nathan Magsig. All right, Nathan, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Nathan Magsig, and I'm a supervisor here in Fresno County, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about FEMA. Many of you may be aware that last week the U.S. EPA began the process of Phase 1 removal, which is removing household hazardous waste off of different properties. As of yesterday, 6 U.S. EPA teams had completed the initial household hazardous waste cleanup for approximately 38 parcels in Big Creek. They've also completed the cleanup at 66 parcels on the west side of Huntington Lake and 8 parcels in Shaver Lake. So they're moving as quickly as they can. These numbers are changing on a regular basis as the teams move quickly to safely remove and dispose of the hazardous debris. Phase 2 debris removal will be coordinated through Cal OES and Cal Recycle. So we cannot begin the Phase 2 cleanup process until Phase 1 is done. Phase 2 is no cost, but property owners must sign up for the cleanup program by submitting a right of entry form. The right of entry form, as well as other information and details on the debris removal process, is now available on the county's Creek Fire Recovery website. This can be found at fresnocountyca.gov/recovery. Under the debris removal icon, just click on that and you can fill out that form. Property owners who wish to proceed with debris removal without state or federal assistance may do so. But first, you must submit a debris removal application to the County Environmental Health Department for approval before work begins. This application may also be found on the recovery website, which again is fresnocountyca.gov/recovery. Effective today, FEMA has established a mobile registration intake center, which we're calling the MRIC, where residents and property owners may go for assistance in registering with FEMA. The FEMA MRIC is located at the Heritage Center, which is 3115 North Millbrook Avenue in Fresno, and is open Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. until further notice. You may qualify for FEMA individual assistance whether you were a property owner or a renter, and if you were impacted in any way by the Creek Fire. Not only if your home was damaged or destroyed, so you are encouraged to register before the deadline of December 16th, 2020. Applying is not a guarantee that assistance will be granted. However, those who do not register by December 16th deadline will not be eligible for any federal assistance that is available now or may become available at a later date. There are 3 ways to apply or check your application status. You can go online and register at disasterassistance.gov. You can download the FEMA mobile app and apply, or you can call the FEMA toll-free number, which is 1-800-621-3362. If you live in Fresno County and you've been affected by the Creek Fire and you have questions that weren't answered about the fire, feel free to reach out to my office. My office number is 559-600-5000. Thank you.
All right, Supervisor, thank you very much. That was a lot of information right there. It's on their website. We'll certainly share that and make that available here for people to find. Okay, now from the Fresno County Sheriff's Office, Lieutenant Kathy Curtis. Lieutenant.
Good evening. As mentioned, I'm Lieutenant Kathy Curtis with the Fresno County Sheriff's Office. I'm here to provide a very brief update as far as the law enforcement operations in the Fresno County portion of the Creek Fire incident. That's going to generally be the southern portion of the Creek Fire incident. What we have been doing since the fire started, which coincidentally 2 months ago to the date today, hard to believe it's been 2 months now, but it has been that we've been involved with this Creek Fire. What we are still doing is providing increased security and increased patrols in the burn area. And what I always like to remind the community of when we talk about these increased patrols is that even though we have extra deputy sheriffs in the area and extra deputy sheriffs that are patrolling the burn areas and making sure that we limit the access to those properties to just the homeowners and the people that should be there, is I always like to share a reminder that oftentimes the community members and the homeowners and the people that live in the areas are the ones who know best the people who belong in the areas and don't belong. So if anybody sees something that's suspicious or sees people who don't belong in those areas, please contact our agency. The main phone number for our sheriff's dispatch is area code 559-600-5000. 888-600-3111. And again, we are out there and we're actively patrolling and we're looking for those things, but if we happen to miss it or not recognize that it's somebody who doesn't belong, please feel free to contact us. If anybody has got any questions or concerns related to anything in the Fresno County jurisdiction of the Creek Fire, they can also go to our website, fresnosheriff.org. They can send in email questions that way or comments, and they will come directly out to the patrol services. One thing that I also wanted to touch on tonight is safety. We've been hearing a lot of safety concerns coming out of people that are working around the Creek Fire, and we want to remind everybody that 2 months of working in the Creek Fire, we've not had any fatalities or serious injuries, and we want to keep it that way too. There's a lot of people that are working up on the mountain right now. We have foresters, environmental people working with cleanup, EPA and the hazmat, biologists, tree cutters, the people that are hauling the equipment up and down. There's contractors, there's still active firefighting that's going on. It's very busy on the mountain right now, and for the most part, there's one common corridor up and down that mountain that everybody's trying to travel on. So please, if everybody would just remember that there's a lot of people up there. Utilities are still trying to restore all the services that have been impacted. A lot of people are out working on the sides of the road. People are pulled off in narrow areas. There's a lot of slow-moving traffic. So for any of the public that's traveling in and around the Creek Fire area, just please remember that there's a lot more traffic than we would normally see, and to drive slowly, drive carefully, and drive defensively. Thank you very much.
All right, Lieutenant, thank you very much. And now with the Sierra National Forest Supervisor, Dean Gould.
Good evening, Dean Gould, Forest Supervisor, Sierra National Forest, and Agency Administrator for the Creek Incident. As Lieutenant mentioned, yes, this is indeed the 2-month anniversary of the Creek Fire. It is hard to believe it has been going that long. And we are now on the 7th incident management team with the Alaska team here with us. And so that is also pretty remarkable. We've come a long way through this, and we've come through it together, though. I think that's really a defining piece. We have to recall that this has been a team effort literally from day one with all of you, both the responders and with the public. So thank you very much for your engagement and your participation and your support throughout these past 2 months. It really would have been a very different incident without the support you've provided throughout. So with that, first we'll go ahead and pull up a fire progression map. We've got a preview of it. All right, so what you're seeing here, and you've seen these previously, I just want to talk about this a little bit. You'll note that the darker red colors, that is where the active fire is taking place most recently. You'll notice that the vast majority of the perimeter of the incident, there just is not any red. If you start at the very top, come all the way down to the south on going down the west side, then you come back up the bottom, and you're going all the way back up now. There you can go all the way down to the southern tip as they're rounding the corner there, and you're coming back up now the eastern side of the incident, and now you can see where we start to get into some of that actual activity that's still going on, the last bit of active fire activity on the incident right now to speak of. There's still a little bit of fire on the inside, some islands that are burning out, things of that nature. But as far as the exterior or the perimeter of it, it's to that northeast portion. It's in the wilderness. It is progressing rather slowly. That does not mean it does not have our attention. It certainly does. We've put a lot of resources on it. We are going to be shifting some resources to the east side again. Just to make sure that we're positioned properly in preparation for this wind event that's coming up. Also, it was explained that the smoke, the wind that's coming, it's going to kind of clear things out here in the drainage. Well, yes, and it cleans it out in large part by pushing it over to the east side. I'm certainly aware of that. And so the good news is that with this weather event coming, that should really make significant progress in getting this last bit of the active portion of the fire out. I'll talk a little bit more about that active portion here in just a couple minutes. Today, I spent the majority of the day driving around the south side of the incident, the southern zone, and it was really insightful. As Lieutenant Curtis mentioned, there is a phenomenal amount of activity going on up there. Literally, the numbers are in the thousands as far as the responders, whether it's incident personnel or all the service providers that are all very busily trying to get things done prior to winter really taking hold up there. So it is indeed extremely busy, and it is all by way of a very narrow corridor. And that's really on both sides of the incident, the north zone and the south side, whether it's coming up the 41 or the 168. So some of those things that are going on, there's right now about 850 personnel assigned to this incident, which should seem like a large number for where we're at in terms of the percent containment, the amount of suppression that's going on. What's happened recently is I actually challenged the team, and they responded in fantastic fashion. Winter is coming. I mean, we're right on the edge of it, and I'm anxious, as many are, to have a good, stable winter for us, but I'm also extremely concerned given the amount of landscape damage that's been done out there. I would just as soon have a little bit more time so that we can get more suppression repair and soil stabilization efforts put in place prior to too much more precipitation or snow coming along. So getting back to my comment, I said I challenged the team. Early on, they had said, well, we're advising you that by the season-ending event, we think we can only get a certain percentage of the suppression repair done. And the challenge was, well, I'd like to have it all done. What would that take? And so the teams really ramped up to get a lot of equipment in here, and with the equipment, additional personnel. And so that's why even at this late part of the incident, you're actually seeing personnel assigned go up, which is a little counterintuitive. But that's why, because we still have suppression going on, but at the same time, we're really surging to get that suppression repair done as fast as we can in a safe manner prior to winter kind of timing us out in that regard. So that is part of the explanation there. Just to put things into context, suppression repair, so that is to restore some of the things that were done as a result of trying to put the fire out. And some of those things, for example, would be 341 miles of dozer line is being looked at to be restored. In addition to that, 152 miles of road that were impacted by the incident are also being looked at, along with 104 miles of hand line that were put in. So altogether, that's a better part of 600 miles of line we're trying to restore. Just another number to tuck away. It's pretty incredible. The entire perimeter, if you were going to map it out, would be just short of 500 miles if you're going to measure all this out in its current length and put it end to end. About 500-mile perimeter. So that certainly helps put things into perspective. That is for sure. I talked about the surging of the suppression repair. So do you know that that's what we're trying to do? We're trying to get as much done before winter times us out as we possibly can in order to help stabilize the conditions out there. Now, but there's a couple other things going on too. I've mentioned BAER, B-A-E-R, Burn Area Emergency Response, a couple times previously. They've completed their assessments. I've submitted the first and almost now the second package. There's going to be 3 going up to the Washington office for approval for funding to get these BAER efforts put in place. And those take suppression repair where that left off. They take that next step and they really focus on soil stabilization where the fire itself had the impact. So if you've seen some of the areas on the forest, going up Forest 81 Road would be really a very stark example. you can see that prior to winter coming, we really need to get some soil mitigations, some stabilizations in place so that we don't have pretty dramatic erosion during these winter events. So that's why we are doing everything we can as quick as we can, and why they had that surge of equipment coming in as well. We're going to have a very large bear response also. Let's see. With that, we have a current forest closure order in place that is very likely to be extended for, in large part, for all the activity that I've explained here, and as Lieutenant Curtis explained. As I drove around today, it is just not practical to be opening up the forest for other recreational activities. You do know, if you look at our website, that the closure order, we did open up that northwest portion on the Bass Lake District. That's about the only portion right now that is really safe or practical for us to open up. The balance of the forest, where you would normally recreate, travel, we really have that much activity going on that's already been explained, and it just wouldn't be safe or practical to be having folks come in to recreate and so forth in the middle of all this, at least not yet. And so I do, again, appreciate your patience in that regard, knowing that we're doing everything we can as quick as we can to get it back to a safe level for you to be able to enjoy it as you did previously for all the different uses that it provides. With that, I'll just end with, I know there's been some questions coming in through the chat room. One that was given to me prior to coming up was, in essence, why don't we just focus on suppression, get that completely knocked out first, prior to getting into all the suppression repair? Wouldn't that be a little quicker, a little more efficient? And so, you know, that up here we still do have some suppression to address. Hopefully that winter event coming here this weekend will in large part take care of that for us. But the reason why we've been kind of doing things in parallel instead of finish one and then start the other is in large part due to the time. Again, we're in a little bit of a race against time with winter. If we try to get this to 100% containment first, that would have, you know, stretched us out, you know, several more weeks from where we would have been, and we would not be even starting suppression repair until probably just about now, or maybe a little bit sooner. Do know that suppression repair has actually been going on for weeks now on this incident. It's going to be, to get all the suppression repair done that is needed out here, that's going to be a 2+ month evolution, and had we not started when we did, we would not have any chance of completing it in time prior to the winter shutting things down for us. So that's why we had to start suppression repair as early as we could. Yes, that does take some resources, but the teams have done a very good job of balancing them and making sure that resources are being applied where risk-based decision dictates that they should be going to. And so I think we're in good shape when it comes to the east side. Again, my apologies for the smoke heading that way. That should be tapering off here hopefully pretty quickly after this weekend. And I'm very confident, as you heard from the fire behavior analysts, the long-term analysts, the risk of this incident getting to any degree of significance closer to the east side is extremely small, especially with this winter event coming. So with that, I've gone a long time. Thank you very much for your participation tonight. I really appreciate it. And for your fortitude and your willingness to be with us throughout this. As I started this discussion, I'll end it the same way, that we've gotten through this together, and we could not have done it without you. So trying to get things back to some degree of normalcy just as quickly as we can. And thank you, and have a good evening.
All right, Dean, thank you very much for that. So that's the end of our presentations. We've been capturing questions. My information staff and colleagues are gathering these questions. Now, we may not get to all of these questions here out loud and address them during the presentation this evening. We're coming up here close to an hour. We still have some more time, and we'll certainly get some of these questions addressed. But if we don't get to them this evening, rest assured that we will follow up and answer those on Facebook. We'll also be responding to the email questions, And our information numbers and how to contact us are out there, and you'll certainly be able to reach out to us, and we'll respond to those as they come in. I'm going to take the easy question here right off the bat. The question is, what is our acreage? The acreage, we haven't got an update since this morning. It's still 378,730 acres, and we remain at 70% containment. Expecting, if conditions allow, another mapping mission from an aerial survey this evening, and we may see what growth has been added out here as it's moved east of Pond Lily Lake and on up the Fish Creek drainage. So expect a slight increase as we've gained some acreage up there, but we'll see what that's reflected in the morning. So first questions, let's see, Byron. I think the first ones are going to be directed at you, Byron Kimball, our fire behavior analyst.
Hi, my name is Sam Wu, and I'll be voicing your questions. Byron, how close is the fire to Mammoth Lakes and Mammoth Mountain and Devil's Bathtub? Is it on the north side of Fish Creek, Lower Fish Creek?
Okay, so we'll deal with the south end first, which is Devil's Bathtub, which is right here just above Lake Thomas Edison. It's about 1.5 miles from the Devil's Bathtub. Really don't expect it to move much closer. That chunk of fire, the heat has really come out of that piece of fire in the last couple of days that we've been watching it, so I really don't expect much more movement down there. As we go up into the north, we're anywhere from 6 to 7 air miles from Fire's Edge to the edge of the town of Mammoth Lakes. Again, the fire is down in here trying to establish on the north side of Fish Creek. Really hasn't gotten onto that north exposure headed up towards Crater Creek and the Cold Creek area on that north end yet. We're watching it. But really don't expect, as you heard Randy with the modeling, we've been watching that, we've been working on that all day today. We don't see any significant movement through that to the north, even under the big winds.
So that might actually answer the next question, but how concerned do we need to be in Mammoth Lakes starting Friday evening when significant winds blow directly from the Fish Creek area flare up?
Is there a concern for Mammoth Lakes? Yes, there is. I learned early on in the fire behavior business, you never say never. Conditions, however, point to that fire not being able to move that way for a number of reasons. Cold weather, the moisture that's coming up, the wind aspect of things. Fire is an energy transfer, and it has to be able to effectively transfer energy from a burning piece of fuel to a non-burning piece of fuel. And the conditions that we currently have make that energy transfer very difficult. And so the more difficult we can make it through the addition of moisture, the reduction of temperature, the better off we are. So just with the conditions we're seeing, our concerns are being mitigated somewhat. But we're never going to say it's not going to get there until Mother Nature's got about 8 foot of snow on the ground and there's nothing possible for it to move.
And how will this weekend's rain and snow event really affect the fire? Will it put it out?
It's not going to put it out. You're going to see smoke out of the fire area until we get significant long-term moisture. It's going to help it quite a bit because that moisture is really going to moisten up our fuels. Again, it's going to make that heat transfer much more difficult because before fire can move to an unburned particle of fuel, it's got to drive all the moisture out of that fuel. It's got to get all the moisture out of the fuel and then raise the temperature of the fuel. And so the more moisture we can have present in the fuel, the higher we can make the fuel moisture in those fuels, the more difficult that energy transfer becomes, the less likely that fire is to spread.
Thank you.
All right, we good with Brian there, Sam?
Yes.
I think we got Cato Howard next up. Cato, Operations Chief.
Cato, Jeff Hinson mentioned in this evening's Mammoth Lakes Town Council meeting that the Forest Service had set some fires on Iva Bell Trail and that the situation had, quote, gotten away from them, quote. How would you reassure the Mammoth Lakes community that they're not in danger?
Well, so those are two different questions to me. Number one, the work on the Ida Bell Trail, I cannot talk about that because that was before we got here and how it done. So I don't know how that developed and what happened after any activity was out there. But I will say that yes, sometimes when we do prescribed fires to fight fire, or we do any kind of backfires on fires, it doesn't work out as we would. But they're usually last resorts, and that was the only chance we had. Either way, it was going to come across those lines. As far as reassuring Mammoth, I think we've heard the weather folks and the fire behavior and long-term analyst. I flew up there today and looked at the fuel types and looked at the terrain and looked at the old fire scars and everything like that. We're still going to get some fire growth out of it, but the way the wind's pushing it and everything like that and where it's going, I don't see it cresting anywhere near that Mammoth Crest where Mammoth Pass is to get over into the Mammoth neighborhood. I see it spotting short distances when one single tree torches and drops embers on the ground and lights the next 1,000-hour fuel on the ground, which starts the next tree, and just plodding along like that until a good snow or something knocks it down. But like I said, right now, 90% of the carrier of the fire is the surface fuels. Surface fuels start getting wet here, and it'll be eliminated. We just have to wait our time. I can't stick firefighters up there. Aircraft going up there in the smoke is not an option. So we're at the will of the fire and hoping for a little help from Mother Nature.
Can you speak a little more to what you're doing in preparation of the gusty winds? Is there still a chance for aircraft to hit the fire by air before the winds come in?
So there is wind thresholds for aircraft, 25 miles an hour for winds, and depending on which way the wind is coming from, not at the tail booms of the fixed wing or on downwind for the air tankers or anything else we use that's fixed wing. So there are some limitations and some restrictions for flight and visibility restrictions for flight before you say it. So if those are met, certainly we're going to put aircraft up in the air. What people don't understand is that, if you're in the Mammoth area, you're looking at the aircraft at the Mammoth helibase, and they're not flying when it's smoky in Mammoth, but there's another helibase down here with the same complement of aircraft, and we have other aircraft that are on loan from other groups that are around the fire. So we have been flying as much as we can on the fire and sending up aircraft and chasing aircraft and sending up the fire watch and getting a video from that when they could see. That's a separate aircraft with different capabilities than any other aircraft we have. So that's what you're seeing. As far as guaranteeing that it can't get over the ridge, I can't guarantee that it'll not get over the ridge. But I don't think it's going to be a large run and gun fire this time of year with these temperatures. The burn window is narrowed down, the humidity recovery is higher, and the time frame that allows stuff to burn is really narrow now. So you're seeing it right now in that time frame that it's burning well.
Thanks. Can I ask you a question? Why haven't you been using more water drops rather than continuing to monitor? Why didn't we hit the fire more aggressively during days with clean air?
We try to hit it aggressively. The issue with visibility is that, and I'm a ground guy, and I understand that every time I look up and I think it's clear, Air Attack has to fly over and approve the airspace for our aircraft to fly in. And visibility looking down at a target through the smoke is a lot different from seeing it across a drainage or a valley or being underneath it. I might think it's perfectly clear, but Air Attack determines the visibility, the wind speeds, the angle, and what we're going to try and do with fixed wing or rotor wing. So we have been hitting it as much as we can, and the weather allows us to hit it and visibility allows us to hit it from both helibases that we use.
Why did you wait until we had a major wind episode to order more resources on the northeast edge of the fire? Why not do this earlier?
We did have the resources earlier to do it. They were put into the suppression repair group because that was a priority also. And the activity up in that area didn't warrant us. There's a risk versus reward issue we have to look at here. My job is to keep everybody on track and keep them working, but my primary job is everybody's safety and the firefighter safety. Firefighter and public safety is very high on our list and getting everybody home at night. It's been a long season. Our tolerance for activities that are unsafe is a lot smaller, and we all know that, and people get injured more at this time and phase of a fire than they do on a going fire. So that risk has to be mitigated before we can go in there. We haven't been able to mitigate a lot of the risk for sending people in or aircraft.
Are we good there, Sam?
Yes, the next question is for Dean.
For Dean? All right, Dean, if we could get you back up here, please.
Okay. Last October, the basin area of Mammoth had a lot of tree work done. There's now a lot of log haystacks around the cabins. We are concerned about fire hazards added to the area with these piles. Can you speak to this concern?
All right, where are these logs stacked at?
The basin area of Mammoth.
Okay. Well,
That may be in you.
yeah, that would be a very good question to have it with the Inyo National Forest staff and see. I don't know that that was a forest project. I'll assume that it was, but I'll just speak to it in a general sense because it sounds like they're concerned about are those log decks around their structures going to provide additional fire risk based from this event, I think is their question. So again, I can't answer as to why those log decks are still there, but I can say that, based on everything we've heard, the likelihood of this incident transferring fire up to that side of, or over to the other side and proximity to those structures is extremely small. Extremely small. As we were saying, never say never, but I'm just going to say it's a number is about as small as you can get without saying no. And so at this point, I don't think that those log decks are necessarily providing additional risk from this incident. That's not to say that from a different incident, should something start there locally, that, certainly you want to remove fuels as quick as you can in proximity to structures. But again, I'd suggest you follow up with that question there locally.
Excellent. What's happening with beetle kill trees? Will it affect future fires?
Well, the beetle kill trees, just in short, the forest, the Sierra, experienced about 60% tree mortality. Now, that wasn't just because of beetles. There was a whole handful of reasons as to why. The beetles certainly contributed to that significantly, and the weather conditions we were experiencing really provided a very accommodating platform for the beetle population to really grow beyond what would normally be found in this area. And so what we experienced was very high mortality in certain species, sugar pine, ponderosa pine, and then it started getting up into the higher elevations. In this incident where the dead trees were in the fire footprint, yes, they certainly contributed to the intensity, to be sure. That, I'm sure, contributed to the effects that we saw, especially those first few days where the incident, moved up to 15 miles, going from Big Creek all the way up to and past Mammoth Pool Reservoir. So, yeah, that just really kind of puts an exclamation point on the need to get as much of this fuel now off the forest as quickly as we can, so that we aren't still contributing to a very robust set of available fuel for another incident to come through. So already you're seeing log trucks come down the road. Those are not from the forest, those are from some of the utility companies and so forth, but we are looking at removing our own roadside hazard trees as well.
And I just have one more question for you, Dean.
Yes.
I'm hearing that the forest will be closed for an extremely long time. Is there any truth to it being closed for years?
No. No, there's not. Right now we're doing it on a 1 to 2 week basis. And you can see that we already we don't have the map available here, but if you go to the Sierra National Forest website, you'll see that already, and this was a couple weeks ago, we already opened up that northwest portion of the forest. So I think that kind of debunks that perception. In reality, it's just the opposite. I assume some risk by opening up that portion as early as I did. But my commitment is to strike that balance, is to provide access to the public as quickly as we safely can, while we're still trying to mitigate the risks associated with the fire and the restoration efforts that come with it. So no, it will not be closed for years. It's a very large footprint that still is under a closure order. As areas become available, we will be opening up them portions at a time. It won't be all in one shot. We'll be opening them up in segments.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You good there, Sam? What else have you got? We good for the evening?
That's good for the evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And I really appreciate all of you folks joining us. Rest assured, as more questions come in, and if you didn't hear your question answered here from the stage tonight, my colleagues in the information shop are following up on these, and we'll research the information so that we can answer your questions. If you're viewing this and it's recorded, you still have the ability to place your questions in the comments, and we will be following those along. And of course, the email is there listed for you along with the fire information number. So I do really appreciate you folks being here with us. And as we get into this weather event and we see how it's going to behave through the weekend, rest assured that if there is anything that you need to know, I will come back here and we'll engage with you via Facebook and the YouTube channel to let you know what's happening so that you can make good, educated decisions based on fire behavior. Thank you very much, and until the next time we talk, I appreciate it.